My husband, Rafael Medina, was asleep beside me when his phone lit up at exactly 3:02 a.m., vibrating against the wooden nightstand, with that short, urgent buzz that only comes from someone who believes they have the right to text a married man at such an hour. Half awake, I turn my head just enough to see the name glowing on the lock screen. Camila T. Admin. And below it, the message that sliced through my chest without mercy. Boss, I miss you. I didn't gasp, I didn't cry, I didn't even touch him. Instead, I felt something inside me go very, very still. The way stillness settles right before a tornado tears an entire town apart. Raphael didn't move. He slept like a man whose conscience was clean, whose secrets were safely tucked away. But I knew better. I had seen too many signs, ignored too many instincts, prayed away too many suspicions that now came crashing back in a single blow. Quietly, without even sitting up, I reached for the phone. The passcode was still our anniversary. How poetic that he used the very day he promised loyalty to hide the messages of another woman. The screen unlocked. More messages. Words I didn't allow myself to read fully, because the first one had already been enough to kill whatever innocence was left in me. I didn't hesitate. I typed a single reply to her with the cold precision of a woman who has stopped hoping for explanations. Come over. My wife isn't home tonight. When the blue check marks appeared, something inside me shifted. Not heartbreak, not hysteria, but a clinical calm that only arrives when betrayal stops wounding you and starts awakening something far more dangerous. I screenshotted the exchange, sent it to my phone, and deleted every trace from his. Then I placed his phone back exactly where it had been. Same angle, same distance from the lamp, same careless ease of a man who believed he would never be caught. I climbed out of bed, my limbs steady despite the storm gathering under my ribs, and walked to the kitchen. The house was silent, the kind of silence only Texas nights can hold, wide and heavy like the sky over the desert. I made coffee, even though my mouth was dry and my hands were ice cold. I sat at the kitchen island, staring at nothing, and told myself the truth that hurt less than the lie he had been selling me for years. I was done being the only loyal one. I remembered our beginnings, the ones he always romanticized for his friends. How we met during a job fair at the downtown convention center. How he used to call me his San Antonio miracle. How he swore we would climb out of struggle together. What he never mentioned was that I was the one who worked 2 jobs, who built my credit from the ground up, who paid the down payment for our house on the east side, who covered his late car notes and his student loan interest when he forgot, who picked up extra shifts while he chased career moves that never seemed to benefit anyone but him. Every sacrifice I made because I believed we were a team, a unit, a future. And yet, while I broke myself to build something solid for us, he was giving pieces of himself to a younger woman who hadn't lifted a single brick in this marriage. My coffee sat untouched. I wasn't thirsty. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't even angry. Not in the loud, messy way people expect a betrayed woman to be. What I felt was sharper, cleaner, more dangerous. I felt clarity, and clarity is the thing that ruins liars. Around 6 a.m., Raphael woke up, groggy and stretching, stepping into the kitchen with a smile that now looked like an insult. He kissed my cheek, unaware that the ground beneath him had already started to crack open. He poured himself coffee, talked about an early meeting, and scrolled lazily through his phone without realizing I was watching the exact moment panic gripped his jaw when he saw the missing notification. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Perfect," I said, and smiled the kind of smile that makes guilty men sweat. He left for work at 7:12 a.m., completely unaware of the message that would bring his mistress to my door. And as soon as he closed the door behind him, the house inhaled deeply, like it understood what was coming. I stayed standing in the living room, arms crossed, staring at the digital clock on the microwave as it changed from 7:20 to 7:21. 30 to 40 minutes. That's how long it would take her to get here, depending on traffic near the medical center. I paced slowly, rehearsing nothing, because there was nothing to rehearse. When a woman is betrayed, her instincts write the script for her. At 7:58, the doorbell rang, soft, polite, like the preface to a disaster. I didn't rush. I walked to the door with the quiet confidence of a woman who is done pleading, done doubting, done shrinking. I opened it, and there she was, Camila Torres, young, pretty, nervous, holding a little bakery box like she was offering my husband a treat instead of offering me the truth. The flirtatious smile she had prepared disappeared the moment she realized I, not Raphael, was the one standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. Her entire spine stiffened with the kind of fear you only feel when you realize you've stepped straight into a trap with your name written all over it. I didn't speak at first. I just looked at her. And in that silence, my silence, she understood everything. That was how the real night began. That was how the real truth started to spill. And that was how the woman I used to be finally died, making space for the woman who would handle what came next without apology, without fear, and without a single tear wasted on a man who sent "I miss you" messages to someone who wasn't his wife. Camila didn't speak right away. Her lips trembled, as if her brain was still buffering the fact that the wife, who wasn't home, was standing 3 feet away from her, blocking the entrance like a locked gate. I let the silence simmer because silence is a weapon women learn to sharpen after years of being talked over, dismissed, or lied to. She clutched the cupcake box tighter, her knuckles turning pale, and I watched the realization crawl across her face, slow, painful, undeniable. "You're his wife?" she whispered, the words cracking like old wood. I tilted my head slightly, the way women do when pretending to be polite while preparing to destroy someone's entire sense of security. "I am," I said. "And you're early. Raphael didn't expect you until later." She swallowed so hard, her throat bobbed like she was choking on her own guilt. He told me. I know what he told you," I cut in gently. "That I wasn't home." Her breath hitched. Her eyes darted toward the driveway, as if she were deciding whether to run or collapse. "Come in," I said, my voice soft, but carrying a blade beneath it. "You got dressed and drove across San Antonio before sunrise." You might as well finish what you came here to do. She froze, torn between fear and humiliation. But she stepped inside. They always do. Women like her never think far ahead. They think in adrenaline, in whispers, in stolen moments. They don't expect consequences because men like Raphael teach them that consequences don't exist. The living room was dim, the morning sun barely reaching past the blinds. And in that quiet space, she looked even younger, even more foolish, like a child who wandered into the wrong house. Sit, I told her, pointing to the sofa Raphael usually sank into every evening after work. She sat on the edge as if the cushions were made of thorns. I stayed standing, my arms crossed, studying her the way a surgeon studies an x-ray before opening up a patient. How long? I asked. She blinked fast. I don't. How long have you been sliding into my husband's phone at 3 in the morning? She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. But nothing came out. Lies need breath. Shame steals breath. That's why she was silent. Did he tell you he loved you? I asked. Her eyes dropped. Sometimes. I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly, but with a calm that made her shoulders crumple. Of course he did. Men like Raphael love the sound of their own promises. She looked up finally, eyes glossy, voice trembling. I didn't know he was married. That was the moment everything inside me grew still. Not angry, not offended, just still. Because she was lying, and we both knew it. Women don't send "I miss you" to a man at 3 a.m. unless they know exactly what they're doing, I said. You knew. She didn't deny it. That was the first honest thing she'd done all morning. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, 12 times. And then I heard the sound I'd been waiting for. A key slides into the front door. Raphael came in, juggling his work bag and a to-go coffee, mumbling to himself about forgetting something. He didn't notice us at first. He stepped inside, shut the door, and turned. Then froze. Completely. Absolutely. Utterly. His face drained of color so fast it was like watching a light bulb flick off. His eyes snapped to Camila. Her eyes snapped to him. And his entire soul looked like it tried to leap out of his body and sprint down the street. Rafi? She whispered, her voice thin as thread. He dropped the coffee. It splattered across the hardwood floor like a brown explosion of guilt. Camila, what are you doing here? He stuttered, voice cracking so badly it sounded like a teenager getting scolded. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I stood between them like judgment itself. She's here, I said calmly, because you invited her. Raphael's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. I didn't. This isn't. What? Don't bother, I said, my voice quiet, steady, lethal. I saw the messages. He swallowed, hard. What messages? He whispered, still trying to salvage a lie inside a burning house. The ones where she said she misses you, I replied, and the one where where I told her to come over. His head jerked toward Camilla. You came because of that? He snapped, as if she were the idiot in the equation. You shouldn't have come. I didn't mean. I laughed, slow and controlled. So, let me get this straight. You cheated. You messaged your little intern. You let her sneak into our marriage like mold. But the only mistake you see is her showing up? He shut his eyes tight, like a child, hoping a nightmare would disappear if he refused to look at it. Elena, please. You're misunderstanding. No, I said. Not anymore. Camila looked at him, betrayal dawning in her own expression now. The sudden recognition that Raphael hadn't just played me. He'd played her, too. Good. She deserved to feel it. He stepped forward, trembling now. Baby, we can talk about this. I took one small step back, not because I feared him, but because I wanted him to see the distance. The real distance. The one between who I used to be and the woman standing in front of him now. No, I said, voice cold enough to freeze his breath. We're not talking. We're not negotiating. We're not fixing anything. Elena, please. You invited destruction into our home, I said. Now watch what it does. Raphael's knees weakened. Camilla's hands shook. And for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing but control. Clean, sharp, deserved. While both of them realized that the show they thought they were starring in had a different director. Raphael opened and closed his hands like he didn't know what to do with them. His breathing shallow, chest rising too fast, as if he'd just run across the scorching streets of San Antonio under the noon sun. But the only thing he was running from now was the truth standing right in front of him. Camilla sat glued to the edge of the sofa, her eyes flicking between us like a trapped animal, realizing too late that the exit was already sealed. Elena, please, Raphael whispered again, voice hoarse, but I raised a hand slightly, and he stopped mid-breath because, for the first time in our entire marriage, he understood his words had no currency here anymore. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, letting my heels tap against the hardwood floor with the kind of steady rhythm that makes guilty people flinch. Camila, I said, my eyes fixed on her. I want you to answer just one question. She swallowed, visibly bracing. Did you ever, at any point, ask Raphael if he was married? Her breath shook. I knew he was involved, but... Involved? I asked, arching a brow. Sweetheart, he wasn't involved. He was married. To me. In this house. In this life. In this bed. Her face flushed red, then white, the embarrassment sinking deep, and Raphael ran a trembling hand across his face, like he wished he could erase the entire morning. Elena, I didn't mean for any of this. Oh, I know. I cut in sharply. You never mean it. Men like you don't cheat with intention. You cheat with convenience, laziness, ego. Raphael winced as if each word slapped him. Please, just be quiet, I said, my voice dropping so low it made both of them freeze. You've said enough to both of us without using your mouth. His shoulders collapsed in defeat, and I turned back to Camila. You know, I used to feel sorry for women like you, I began, thinking you were victims too, manipulated, lied to. Her eyes softened for a second, like maybe she thought I was about to show compassion. I wasn't. But the truth is, I continued, you walked into this knowing exactly what you were stepping on. And now you're shocked to find out that a married man lies? What did you think he was going to do? Leave his wife? Marry you? Take you to Sunday brunch with his mother? Camilla's eyes filled with tears she didn't dare let fall. I leaned in slightly. If he lies to his wife, he will lie to you. If he betrays his home, he will betray your bed. And if he cheats in the dark, he will cheat in the light. You weren't special, Camilla. You were temporary. That word, temporary, hit harder than any insult. It cut through the last bit of fantasy she had held onto. She lowered her head, shame spreading across her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Raphael stepped forward again, desperate. Elena, please, come on. Can we not do this in front of her? I turned my face toward him slowly, cold and deliberate. Oh, but that's exactly why I'm doing it. He blinked, confused, terrified. Why? Because you humiliated me quietly, I said. So I will humiliate you truthfully. His breath hitched. Camila wiped her trembling hands on her dress, trying to compose herself, but nothing could save her from the truth sitting between us like a loaded gun. I walked to the center table, picked up the cupcake box she had brought, turned it in my hand, and let out a small, amused exhale. This is what you brought my husband? She didn't answer. A cupcake, I repeated, almost laughing. You thought this was romance? She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Let me teach you something, I said gently, almost kindly. The man you think you're falling for? I built him. I shaped him. I carried him. I fed him. I worked to keep this roof over his head. You got the version of him I created, not the real one. Raphael covered his face with both hands. Camila trembled harder. And let me tell you something else, I continued. Men don't cheat because they find someone better. They cheat because they find someone easier. I watched her force herself to breathe. Now, I said, you may go. Her head snapped up. What? Get out, I said calmly. You came here, hoping for a moment with a man who belongs to someone else. You got your moment. Leave with whatever dignity you have left. She stood quickly, so quickly she almost tripped. She grabbed her purse and rushed toward the door. But before she could escape, I added one last truth sharp enough to follow her for the rest of her life. Camila, I called. She froze. Next time, don't aim for a man who is taken. Aim higher, or at least aim for one worth the trouble. She fled. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The house fell into a silence so heavy it felt alive. Raphael finally looked up at me, tears in his eyes, panic on his tongue, guilt in every line of his face. Elena, I'm so sorry. I never meant. Stop, I said quietly. Today isn't about apologies. Then what is it about? He whispered. I looked at him, really looked at him. and saw the man I had built standing in front of the man he actually was. It's about consequences, I said. Yours. His breath trembled. And it's about a decision, I added. Mine. His lips parted, terrified. What decision? I stepped closer, my voice calm, steady, final. Whether this ends with you leaving, or with me letting you stay long enough to see everything you almost lost. Raphael stood in the center of our living room, like a man awaiting a sentence he still hoped he could negotiate, his shoulders caving inward, as though the truth hanging between us was too heavy for him to hold. He tried to speak again, but guilt had swollen his tongue, and all that came out was a shaky, "Elena, please." I slowly walked past him, each step deliberate, calm, controlled, the kind of calm that terrifies a man more than screaming ever could. Sit down, I said. He obeyed instantly, dropping onto the sofa like a child who had finally realized his mother wasn't bluffing. I stood across from him, the morning sun now fully spilling into the room, exposing everything. The lies on his face, the shame in his posture, the pathetic remorse clinging to him like sweat. You want to know what decision I'm making? I said, my voice low but razor sharp. Yes, he whispered. I need to know. Good, I replied. Then listen. Really listen. Because you've spent years hearing my words without understanding them. He swallowed hard. Elena, I know I messed up. No, I cut in before he could finish the sentence he had rehearsed 1,000 times in his head. You didn't mess up. You chose. You chose her. You caught the attention of someone who doesn't know a single thing about building a life. You chose the thrill of cheap validation over the loyalty of a woman who held you down when you couldn't even hold yourself up. Don't insult my intelligence by calling that a mistake. Raphael covered his mouth with both hands, elbows resting on his knees, breathing heavily through his fingers. I swear to you, Elena, it didn't mean anything. Exactly, I said sharply. That's the problem. You threw away something that meant everything for something that meant nothing. He dragged his hands down his face, eyes watering, not from heartbreak, but from the horrifying realization that for the first time, he wasn't in control. I love you, he whispered, voice cracking. You know, I love you. I stared at him, unblinking. Love? I repeated. You don't love me, Raphael. You love comfort. You love admiration. You love the version of you that I built. What you don't love is accountability. His jaw clenched, but he couldn't deny it. Let me ask you something, I continued, stepping closer. If Camilla hadn't been caught today, if I hadn't answered your phone, would you have stopped? He froze. And in that frozen second, the truth bared its teeth. He wouldn't have. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. His silence was louder than a confession. Thank you, I said softly. That's all I needed to know. He reached for me then, instinctively, desperately, as if touching me might somehow pull him back into the version of life where I still believed him. I stepped away before his fingers could graze my skin. The rejection hit him like a physical blow. Elena, please, he begged, his voice breaking in that high, pathetic way Men sound when they finally realize the woman they took for granted is no longer within reach. Don't walk away from me. I can fix this. I'll block her. I'll delete everything. You'll do nothing, I said, because this isn't about Camila. If it wasn't her, it would have been another woman, and then another, and another. You didn't break my trust with one message. You broke it with every quiet choice you made long before that. Raphael slammed his fist into his thigh, frustrated and helpless, the way a spoiled child reacts when reality denies him what he wants. I said, "I'm sorry," he shouted. And I said, "This isn't about apologies," I replied, my tone deadly calm. "This is about recognition." "Recognition of what?" he demanded. I leaned in until my face was level with his, my voice steady as steel. "That a woman like me doesn't beg a man like you to love her right. I don't negotiate with betrayal. I don't bargain for loyalty. And I sure as hell don't compete with children who bring cupcakes to married men." He stared at me, shattered. "So what? What do you want to do?" "I want you," I said, "to understand that you no longer get to decide how this marriage moves forward. I do." His breath stalled. Are you leaving me?" I let the question hover, heavy, electric, powerful. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "But here's what I do know. You will not sleep in our bedroom tonight. You will not touch me. You will not question me. And you will not ask me what I'm thinking. Not anymore." The color drained from his face. "Elena, get your things," I said. "You're staying in the guest room until further notice." He blinked rapidly, confusion and fear battling across his features. "But why? I thought we were going to—" "Because I'm not rushing this," I replied coldly, "and neither are you. You've done enough rushing behind my back." He lowered his head, defeated. "I'll do whatever you want," he whispered. "I know," I said simply, "because now you understand what it feels like to lose something valuable." He inhaled shakily, tears gathering in his eyes. "Elena, do you hate me?" I paused, not for dramatic effect, but because I wanted to feel the truth inside my own chest before speaking it. "No," I said softly. "I don't hate you. I'm beyond hate." He looked up, confused. "Then what do you feel?" I answered without hesitation. "Clarity." He flinched. Then he stood up slowly, shoulders sagging, and walked down the hall toward the guest room with the quiet steps of a man who finally realized he was not the victim of this story. He was the consequence. And as I watched him disappear behind the door, I felt the shift settle deep within me. He thought losing me would happen in an explosion. But the truth was far worse for him. He was going to lose me in silence. Raphael closed the guest room door behind him with the defeated slowness of a man who finally understood that apologies do not undo reality. And as the soft click echoed through the hallway, I stood alone in the living room, staring at the space he had occupied moments earlier, feeling the strange, quiet shift inside me. The shift that happens when the person who once held the center of your world becomes nothing more than a shadow moving in a house you paid for. I sank onto the sofa. The same sofa he used to fall asleep on after long workdays. The same sofa where we once planned vacations we never took. And, for a moment, I let myself feel the weight of all the years I had poured into this marriage. The double shifts, the sacrifices, the dreams I folded neatly and placed on a high shelf, just so his ambitions could breathe. I had spent years trying to build something solid with him, and yet he had allowed a woman who barely knew him to slip into the cracks I was too exhausted to notice. The quiet of the house felt different now, not peaceful, not comforting, but clean, like a silence that had been waiting its turn after years of being drowned out by my own efforts to hold everything together. I got up and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see the orange glow of the San Antonio morning rising over the street. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to confront. If Raphael was no longer mine, what exactly was I losing? Not loyalty. He hadn't given me that in a long time. Not honesty. His entire double life proved that. Not a partnership. A partnership requires two people rowing in the same direction. And I had been rowing alone for years. The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed that I had ever feared losing him. I didn't fear losing him. I feared losing the years I had invested, the sacrifices I had made, the identity I had built around keeping a man afloat. That realization sat heavy but liberating in my chest, like taking a breath after being underwater for too long. I walked back to the kitchen and poured myself another cup of coffee, this time adding just a touch of sugar. A small sweetness I suddenly realized I hadn't treated myself to in months. Raphael always complained it made the coffee too soft, so I stopped adding it. I didn't even notice when I stopped. But when I tasted it now, sweet, warm, unapologetically mine, I realized how many pieces of myself I had trimmed away to keep peace with a man who couldn't even keep peace with his own conscience. I set the mug down, and as the quiet settled again, I felt the next wave of clarity wash over me. Raphael wasn't the only one who had to face consequences today. Camilla would too. Because what she tried to ruin was not just a marriage. It was the life I had bled for. And even though I already sent her out of my home, I wasn't finished with her. Not yet. Not while she still had the comfort of thinking Raphael might come back to her once the dust settled. I walked down the hall toward the guest room, not to start another confrontation, but to make sure Raphael wasn't doing what guilty men always do, reaching for their phone in panic, trying to control the damage, trying to warn the woman who helped them break vows they never should have touched. I opened the door without knocking. Raphael jolted up from the edge of the bed, like a boy caught doing something shameful. "Elena," he started, his voice a mix of fear and exhaustion. "Give me your phone," I said simply. No threat, no anger, just a clear instruction. His eyes widened. Why? Because I said so. He hesitated, not because he wanted to hide something, but because handing over his phone was like handing over his last illusion of power. "Elena, please, I'm not talking to her," he whispered. "I swear." Good, I said. Then you won't mind proving it. Slowly, reluctantly, he placed the phone in my hand. The device felt warm, like the guilt still clinging to it. I scrolled through his messages, not searching for new lies, but confirming silence. Camila hadn't messaged again. Of course, she hadn't. She was humiliated, shaken, dismantled. But humiliation cools quickly when a woman convinces herself the man still cares. And I needed Raphael to understand one thing clearly. The only person he should fear losing was me, not her. I set his phone on the dresser. You will not contact her, I said. Not to apologize, not to explain, not to make her feel better. She will sit with the choices she made, just like you will. He nodded, his voice barely a whisper. I won't. I studied him for a moment. The slumped shoulders, the trembling hands, the panic swirling in his eyes, then said something that made him visibly flinch. Raphael, I asked, do you realize she thought you were going to leave me for her? His head jerked up. What? No, no, I never. You didn't have to say it out loud, I interrupted. Men rarely do. Cheating itself implies the possibility. His throat tightened. He looked sick. I don't want her, he said firmly, almost desperately. I only want you. But you didn't choose me, I replied. Not when it mattered. He opened his mouth, closed it, and lowered his gaze. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Raphael, I'm going to tell you something you need to hear. He looked up, bracing. She wasn't in love with you, I said. She was in love with the version of you I built. His lips parted in shock, and I let the truth settle. Camila saw the polished husband, the stable man, the confident leader, I continued. All the qualities you have because I carried you through the years it took to become that man. He blinked rapidly, tears threatening again. You don't understand, he whispered. No, I said gently. You don't understand. You risked everything I helped you build for someone who never would have loved you if she had met you before I put you together. His shoulders crumbled under the weight of that truth. I straightened, feeling my power settle back into my bones. I'm done talking for now, I said. Stay here, stay quiet, and for the first time in your life, Raphael, think. Then I walked out, closing the door behind me, and for the first time since the message appeared at 3:02 a.m. I felt something unfamiliar but welcome rising in my chest, the beginning of freedom. I closed the guest room door behind me and walked back down the hallway, feeling the house shift under the weight of everything that had been revealed. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like something I had to tiptoe around. It felt like it finally belonged to me. I poured myself another cup of coffee, this time slow and intentional, savoring the small rebellion of adding extra sugar just because I liked it that way, not because Raphael preferred it black and strong, as if bitterness in a cup somehow translated to masculinity in a man. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring into the steam rising from the mug, and for a moment, I let myself absorb the truth that had been sitting quietly beneath all the chaos of the morning. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't spiraling. I wasn't drowning. I was, strangely, relieved. Betrayal didn't break me. It freed me. It pulled back a curtain I'd been afraid to touch, revealing the version of Raphael I should have seen sooner, and the version of myself I had forgotten existed. I walked into the living room, letting my fingers trail along the back of the sofa, remembering how many nights I'd sat here waiting for him to come home, convincing myself that his excuses were real, that his long hours were noble, that his distance was temporary. And as those memories flooded my mind, I felt a quiet, sharp truth settle at the center of my chest. I had carried this marriage alone longer than I realized. I sat down, took a deep breath, and pulled out my phone, not to check on Raphael, not to stalk Camila, not to react impulsively, but to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Take inventory of my life without him at the center. I opened my banking app first. Seeing the numbers staring back at me made something inside me shift again. For years, Raphael had treated our marriage like a team effort, even though the math told a very different story. My long hours, my overtime, my savings, my discipline, my sacrifices, all the stability he now boasted as a self-made man had been built on my back. And until this moment, I hadn't realized how deeply that truth cut. Not because I wanted credit, but because he had spent so long acting like everything we had was a reflection of his success. I closed the app and scrolled through old photos. Our wedding, our first home, our anniversary trips, the dinners I cooked, the birthdays I planned, the smiles we posed for. They looked real. They looked happy. But now, with clarity sharpening every memory, I saw the truth hidden behind each picture. I saw myself glowing with effort, and I saw Raphael glowing with attention. I turned the phone off and placed it face down. I didn't want memories. I wanted direction. I stood and made my way to the bedroom, our bedroom. And when I stepped inside, I didn't feel sadness or loss. I felt ownership. I walked around the room slowly, taking in the framed photos, the neat dresser, the bed I had chosen and paid for. And as I looked at the life we'd built, a thought came to me. Quiet, steady, certain. If he wanted to destroy this marriage, I wasn't going to stop him. But I would decide how it ended. I walked to the bathroom sink and looked at my reflection in the mirror. There was no puffiness in my eyes, no trembling in my hands, no cracks in my voice. I didn't look like a woman falling apart. I looked like a woman waking up. I splashed cold water on my face, pulled my hair back, and walked out feeling strangely stronger than I had in years. As I reached the living room again, I heard a soft thump from the hallway. Raphael moving in the guest room. I ignored it. Let him sit there with his guilt. Let him drown in the silence he created. A few minutes passed before I heard it. The gentle creak of the guest room door opening slowly, followed by Raphael's hesitant footsteps, inching down the hallway like a child approaching a parent after breaking something valuable. "Elena?" he called out softly. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence do what words couldn't. He stepped into the living room. His eyes were swollen, his hair disheveled, his entire body drooping like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. "Please," he whispered, "just give me a chance to explain." I finally looked up at him. "Explain what?" I asked calmly. "Explain the part where you lied? Or the part where you snuck around? Or the part where you risked everything I built for you because you wanted to feel wanted?" His voice cracked. "I don't know why I did it. I don't even want her. It was stupid. I was stupid. I swear, I love you." "Loving someone," I said slowly, "is not a feeling. It's not a declaration. It's a discipline, a commitment, a choice. And you made your choice at 3 in the morning when you picked up her message and answered her instead of rolling over and holding your wife." He flinched. "Elena, I can fix this." "No," I replied. "You can't." His lips trembled. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "You," I said, "are supposed to sit in the mess you created. You're supposed to feel every ounce of discomfort, every second of guilt, every moment of dread, because that's what accountability feels like." His knees buckled slightly. "But what about us?" he whispered. The way he said us almost made me laugh. "There is no us right now," I said. "There's you, and there's me. And there's a very long road between those two places." His throat worked painfully. "Are you leaving me?" I inhaled slowly, letting the truth settle into my chest before speaking. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I do know this. You will not rush me. You will not pressure me. And you will not influence my decision." He nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. And then, softly, I added the sentence that made him crumble completely. "For once in your life, Raphael, you don't get to decide what happens next." He broke, fully, quietly. Finally, he understood the depth of what he had destroyed. And as he sank to the sofa in silent grief, something inside me solidified, an unshakable truth I could no longer ignore. I was no longer fighting for this marriage. I was fighting for myself. Raphael sat hunched over on the sofa, elbows on his knees, palms pressed against his forehead, like he was trying to hold his skull together. And for a long moment, I simply watched him, studied him, the way a person studies the wreckage of a car that once looked brand new, but now lies crumpled on the side of the highway. He trembled, not from fear of losing Camilla, she was irrelevant now, but from something far more devastating. The sudden, crushing understanding that he no longer had any control over me, or over the narrative he'd been crafting for years. He lifted his head slowly, eyes bloodshot, voice cracking like dry wood. "Elena, if you leave, I won't survive." I raised an eyebrow. "You will. Men always do. They break a woman, watch her bleed, then swear they'll die without her. And yet, somehow, they always manage to keep breathing." He flinched, but I continued, my tone calm, surgical, precise. "Raphael, you don't fear losing me. You fear losing the version of yourself that you only get to be when you're with me. The disciplined man, the respected man, the man who looks like he has his life together." He blinked rapidly, tears spilling freely now. "But I—" "No," I cut in. You don't get to argue with me. Not today. He lowered his head again, defeated. I sat across from him, folding my hands in my lap, and said the words that made him stiffen. Let's talk about why you really cheated. His eyes darted up. I told you. Raphael, I said sharply, do not insult me with cliches. The house felt small around us, tight with truth. You cheated, I continued, because she looked at you the way you wished I still looked at you. Wide-eyed, impressed, grateful for your attention. And you mistook attention for affection. You mistook validation for love. His chest rose and fell unevenly, his breathing turning shallow again. You liked feeling wanted, I said. Liked being the center of someone's little world. Because in our real world, the one built on bills and responsibility and adulthood, you knew damn well that you didn't keep up. He tried to speak, but the words stayed trapped in his throat. And do you know how I know all of this? I asked. He looked at me helplessly, because I used to look at you that way too, I whispered. That sentence shattered him. His shoulders shook violently as he tried to stifle a sob, but it didn't matter, because his tears weren't my responsibility anymore. Elena, I know I disappointed you, he choked. I know You didn't disappoint me, I corrected. You exposed yourself. He froze. You showed me that the man I believed in existed only because I kept believing. You showed me that loyalty meant more to me than it ever meant to you. And you showed me, I added, leaning slightly forward, that you are not a victim of weakness. You are a participant in betrayal. He held his breath, like exhaling would collapse him entirely. I stood and walked slowly toward the window, letting the morning light cast long shadows across the floor. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked quietly, not turning to face him. He shook his head even though I couldn't see him. Not that you cheated, I said. Not even that you lied. I paused, letting the next truth fall with weight. It's that you were willing to let me spend the rest of my life believing I wasn't enough, while you went looking for pieces of yourself inside other women. Behind me, I heard the faint sound of his breath breaking. Elena. No, he rasped. You've always been enough. More than enough. You're everything. I turned around slowly, my expression cold, steady. Then why wasn't your loyalty enough? He collapsed back into the sofa, as if the question itself ripped something out of him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, What do you want me to do? I stepped closer, my tone quiet but commanding. I want you to understand that consequences are not punishment. They are reality. And your reality, I said, pointing toward the hallway, is that you sleep alone. You think alone. You sit with this alone. He nodded weakly. Yes, I'll do whatever. You already said that, I interrupted. But obedience is not repentance. Fear is not growth. Compliance is not transformation. He stared at me, as if he were hearing a language he'd never learned. If you want even a sliver of a chance to stay in this marriage, I continued, you will need to learn the difference between guilt and accountability. He swallowed. What's the difference? Guilt, I said, is crying because you got caught. Accountability is changing because you finally see yourself clearly. His face tightened. He wasn't crying for me. He was crying for himself. And that truth made me stronger. I took a step back. Raphael, you will make an appointment with a therapist today. Individual therapy, not couples. This is your mess, not ours. You will also write down every detail of your involvement with her, not to explain, not to justify, but to expose your own patterns to yourself. He nodded frantically. Yes, yes, I will. Good, I said, because until you confront your truth, I won't confront the possibility of forgiveness. His breath shuddered. Elena, do you think one day we'll be okay again? I let the silence hang before answering. That depends entirely on who you choose to become from this moment forward. His eyes brimmed again, but I didn't soften. And Raphael, I added, voice dropping into an icy whisper, don't you dare become a better man for the next woman. If you change for yourself. Not for me, not for her, not for the guilt clawing at you. He nodded, broken but listening. I turned away, feeling something heavy lift from my chest. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. It was clarity. The kind that comes when a woman finally stops living inside the illusion of who she hopes her husband is and starts seeing exactly who he really is. And for the first time since the clock struck 3:02 a.m. that morning, I felt the ground beneath me again. Raphael stayed on the sofa long after my final words, frozen in the kind of silence that only arrives after a truth hits so hard it rearranges a person's entire understanding of themselves. And when I walked past him toward the hallway, he didn't call after me. He didn't dare. Because even in his desperation, he finally recognized something he had never seen clearly before. I wasn't the same woman he betrayed at 3:02 a.m. I walked into our bedroom and closed the door behind me. Not slamming it, not locking it, just closing it with a calm finality that said, more than anger ever could. I leaned against the door and let out a slow breath, then looked around the room that had witnessed years of loyalty, effort, sacrifice, and belief. Belief I had carried alone. The morning light seeped through the blinds in thin gold streaks, falling across the bed where Raphael had slept beside me for years, unaware that I'd been slowly shrinking myself to fit inside the version of life he wanted. But now that version was done. I walked to the dresser, pulled open a drawer, and took out the small leather-bound journal I hadn't touched in years, the one I used to write in before marriage, taught me to swallow my needs and bury my voice. I opened it, smoothing the old pages with my fingers, and for the first time in a long time, I wrote. Not about Raphael, not about the marriage, not about the betrayal, but about myself, my strength, my clarity, my new boundaries, my new future. I didn't realize how long I'd been writing until the sun shifted and warmed the side of my face. When I finally set the journal down, I felt lighter, not healed, not resolved, but awake. I walked into the bathroom, washed my face again, brushed my hair, tied it back neatly, and looked at my reflection with new eyes. There was a softness gone, but in its place stood something cleaner, sharper, more honest. Raphael hadn't destroyed me. He had revealed me. When I returned to the living room, he was still sitting exactly where I'd left him. Eyes swollen, hands clasped tightly together, as though prayer might deliver him from consequences he had earned. He stood when he saw me, instinctively, like a student rising when the teacher enters the room. "Elena," he whispered, voice frayed. "Did you think?" I asked. "Yes," he said immediately. "I've been thinking about everything, about who I've become, about what I risked, about how I hurt you." "Good," I replied simply. He exhaled shakily. "And I want to do better. I want to be better, not just for you, but—" "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "This is not your moment to declare transformation. That comes later, if it comes at all." He nodded, chest trembling. "So, what happens now?" he asked quietly. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I noticed something I had missed in all the chaos. He wasn't fighting me. Not anymore. He was fighting himself. "This is what happens now," I said. "You're going to pack a bag." The color drained from his face. "Pack? A bag?" "Yes," I said calmly. "You're leaving the house for a while." His breath caught, panic rising instantly. "Elena, please, don't kick me out. Please, Raphael," I said, my tone turning sharper. "You will not beg. You will not negotiate. You will not make this harder than it needs to be. You will pack your things and go stay with your cousin or your brother or anyone else who's willing to let you sit with the consequences of your choices." His voice cracked. "But this is our home." "No," I corrected. "This is my home. I built it. I paid for it. I kept it standing. You contributed to the address, not the foundation." He shut his eyes, pained. "And you're leaving," I finished. "Not permanently, not yet, but long enough for you to separate guilt from clarity." He rubbed his hands over his face, trembling. "If I leave, are you coming back to me?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "That depends on who you become while you're gone." For a moment, he just stood there, broken, small, stripped of every false confidence he had once worn so comfortably. Then, slowly, painfully, he nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll go." "Good," I said. "And Raphael—" He looked up, eyes glassy but attentive. "When you walk through that door, you walk out as the man who betrayed me. If you ever walk back in, you'd better come back as the man who finally understood what I was worth." He inhaled sharply, and in that breath I saw it. The moment a man realizes he has no more excuses left. Raphael turned, walked down the hall, and quietly packed a small bag. I didn't rush him. I didn't watch him. I didn't soften. When he finally reappeared with the bag slung over his shoulder, he stopped at the door and looked at me, like he was memorizing the moment. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know," I replied. "But love without loyalty is nothing." He shut his eyes, pained, then opened the door, and stepped out into the bright Texas morning alone. The door closed behind him with a soft but powerful click. The kind of click that changes a life. The house fell into silence. My silence. A silence I finally owned. I stood there for a long moment, hand steady, breath steady, heart steady. And then I turned around, walked toward the kitchen, poured myself another cup of sweetened coffee, and sat down at the table. The table I had bought, the home I had kept, the life I had carried, knowing exactly who I was now. A woman who had been betrayed, but not broken. A woman who had been tested, but not diminished. A woman who finally chose herself.